Have you ever stopped to think about how incredible it is that we can get a live picture of what's happening inside the human body, all without making a single cut? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain on the amazing technology of ultrasound. It lets us do exactly that, but it uses something you probably wouldn't expect. So, let's get into it.
I mean, it really does sound like something out of science fiction, doesn't it? The ability to just peek right through skin and muscle to see organs, to watch blood flowing, to even see a developing baby. So, what's the secret here? It's not some kind of superpowered camera, and it's not X-rays. Nope, the answer is actually way, way cooler.
That's it. Sound. But not just any sound. We're talking about incredibly high-frequency sound waves, so high that there's no way a human could ever hear them. You can think of ultrasound as a kind of biological sonar. It's using echoes to literally paint a picture of our entire inner world.
Okay, so here's the basic breakdown. First, and this is really important, it's totally safe and non-invasive. What happens is a little device, called a transducer, sends out these sound waves. They travel into the body and they bounce off of all the different internal structures. Then, the machine listens for those echoes to come back, and by calculating how long they took, it builds that classic black and white image we all recognize. Now, the real heart of this whole operation is that handheld device I just mentioned, the transducer. This thing is the engine. It's where all the magic happens, and it performs this amazing trick of physics, converting one kind of energy into another, and then right back again. So get this. Inside the tip of the transducer, there are these special things called piezoelectric crystals. Now, the cool thing about these crystals is that when you zap them with a little electricity, they physically change shape. They start to vibrate really, really fast. And that vibration, well, that's what creates the high-frequency sound waves.
So step one in the process is the machine sending a quick little electrical pulse to those crystals. They vibrate, and that sends a ping of sound out of the transducer and deep into the body. And then, instantly, the transducer switches jobs. It goes from talking to listening, just waiting for that echo to return. As that sound wave travels, it eventually hits a boundary, like, say, where the liver meets a blood vessel. Part of that sound wave bounces right back. This returning echo hits those same piezoelectric crystals, and this is where they do their second magic trick. The pressure from the sound wave makes them vibrate, and this time, that vibration creates an electrical pulse, which it sends right back to the computer for analysis. But, not all sound waves are the same, and this is where the skill of the operator comes in. They have to make a really critical choice about frequency. See, a higher frequency wave gives you this beautiful, sharp, high-resolution image where you can see tons of detail. The catch? Those waves can't get very far into the body. On the flip side, a lower frequency wave can go much, much deeper, but the trade-off is you get a fuzzier, lower resolution picture. It's a constant balancing act. So the rule of thumb is pretty simple, really. If you're looking at something just under the skin, like a muscle or a tendon, you're going to grab a high-frequency probe to get that super sharp image. But if you need to see an organ that's buried deep inside, like a kidney, you have to be willing to sacrifice some of that sharpness and use a lower frequency just to be able to reach it. Okay, so the machine is getting all these echoes back. But how does it turn that raw data into a clear picture? Getting a good, useful image isn't automatic. It really takes skill. The operator is kind of like an artist, using a whole bunch of different tools to paint the best possible picture with sound. One of the first and most important settings is depth. Just take a look at this image. This is a classic mistake. The operator has the depth set way too deep. The actual thing they want to look at is that tiny little structure at the top, and all that black at the bottom, that's just wasted space. You're not getting any useful information from it. And now, look at this. Much better, right? All they did was decrease the depth, and now the organ they're interested in fills the whole screen. This lets the machine focus all of its brain power on the area you actually care about, which gives you a much better, way more detailed image. So the big takeaway here is super simple. Maximize your screen's real estate. Whatever it is you're looking at, your goal is to make it as big as possible on the screen by getting your depth just right. All right, the next crucial setting is called gain. You can basically just think of it as the brightness control. It tells the machine how much to amplify the returning echoes. Now, if you crank the gain way up, like in this picture, everything just gets blasted with white. You lose all the subtle details, all the contrast. It's just a washed-out mess. So the goal, of course, is to find that sweet spot, that perfect Goldilocks level of gain. Not too dark, not too bright, but just right. When you nail it, you can see all the different textures and structures inside the organ with perfect clarity. It's a delicate balance for sure. So now we've got this perfectly crafted image on the screen. But what are we even looking at? How do you make sense of all those different shades of gray? To do that, we need to learn how to speak the language of echoes. The most important concept here is something called echogenicity. I know, it's a mouthful, but all it really means is how much does a structure reflect sound waves? That's it. The more sound something bounces back, the more echogenic we say it is, and the brighter it's going to look on the screen. So when something on the screen is super bright, almost glowing white, we call that hyperechoic. Think about things that are really dense and hard, like bone or a gallstone. They act like a solid wall to the sound waves, reflecting pretty much everything right back to the transducer. And on the total opposite end of the spectrum, if you see something that's completely black, we call that anechoic. Anechoic, literally without echo. This happens when the sound waves just pass right through a structure with nothing to bounce off of. And this is the classic look of simple fluid, like what you'd see in the bladder or inside a cyst. But wait, how does the operator know if they're looking at things upside down or backwards? Well, there's always a little bump or a marker on the side of the transducer, and that little mark corresponds to a dot or a logo on the screen. This is absolutely crucial. It's how the operator stays oriented and always knows which side of the image is the patient's left, their right, their head, or their feet. And finally, let's talk about something really fascinating, artifacts. These are things that show up on the image that don't actually correspond to a real physical structure. They're kind of like ghosts in the machine. But here's the cool part. Sometimes these mistakes can actually give us really important clues. Check out this classic example, the mirror image artifact. A sound wave hits the liver, then it bounces off the super bright reflective diaphragm. But some of that sound takes a weird detour. It bounces back into the liver again before it finally returns to the probe. Because that echo took a longer path, the machine gets tricked. It thinks that structure is farther away, and it draws what it sees on the other side of the diaphragm. It literally creates a phantom liver. So you see, ultrasound is so much more than just taking a picture. It's this dynamic dance of physics happening live, inside the body. It shows us that by understanding how these waves travel, how they reflect, and even how they create illusions, we can unlock this incredibly deep view of ourselves. So I'll leave you with this question. If even the machine's mistakes can tell us a story, what else can we learn just by looking at things in a completely new way?